Hello, this is Alex Ramsey, host of Night of the Batman, with the much anticipated Dark Knight Rises review. Okay, before I start my actual review process with the pros and cons and the summary, let me just start out with my first thoughts and just my thoughts in general about this movie. Okay, this movie is amazing. Everything in it from start to beginning is just spectacular. Also, I want to warn you that this is a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen the movie, I suggest you watch it before watching this review of it. I'll give you a second if you haven't seen the movie. Okay, if you're still here, I guess you've seen the movie. Okay, now let's just hit on some of my favorite parts and just overall impressions of the movie. This movie, I had nothing to worry about earlier when I was talking about how I wonder how closely they're going to stick to this. They actually stick incredibly close to certain parts of Batman, like the whole Nightfall story. They have even bits of No Man's Land in it with the blowing up of the bridge and basically the government coming in and saying, okay, you guys are on your own for now, which is part of No Man's Land. Also, Bane breaking Bruce's back, even though the whole over the knee thing like he does in the comics is amazing that they were able to include that in this. Also, just the character of Bane is really good. They turn him into, admittedly, I haven't really seen a lot of Bane. When I read Batman, he's not really in it a lot, but this Bane was intimidating, was threatening, and actually, this is to the credit of Christopher Nolan and how Tom Hardy portrayed him. I was worried halfway through that, wow, he might not make it out of this. This guy is almost unbeatable. Also, I like how just like certain parts of it, like the end, how the John Blake character, how even though he's not technically Robin, he already knew about the Batcave, but he goes in there and you have a feeling he's going to take up Batman's mantle since the Batman is dead, but Bruce Wayne still lives and has moved on, which I'm glad he reached that conclusion in his life, and that's the only logical conclusion and realistic thing. He can't go on doing this forever, because he wouldn't have survived. I also like one of the lines in this when Alfred is talking about how he is plays in later. He said he imagines that he's sitting at a restaurant and he looks over and sees Bruce, and Bruce sees him, and they both know who each other are, but they don't say anything to each other because he's happy and he's moved on from Batman persona, which I thought was really interesting and also kind of tragic. I also think that when Alfred leaves, it shows how serious a situation that Bruce is in, and how at the beginning, how just out of his league he is with Bane. I also like just how they call back to certain things, like Bruce has a nightmare of Ra's al Ghul, and it repeats the scene earlier where he's talking to him in a prison, and also just how they flash back to like previous movies and show scenes and remind us of different things, and how history is echoing through these different movies, and how it all sort of ties together, all the movies, into one cohesive, like, just end to a very, very good story. I also like how just how the previous stuff that happened in the last movie, how really even 8 years later that's still bothering Gordon, and how Bane basically shoves it right back in their face and shows everyone who Harvey Dent really was. That was really good. And how just broken most of the characters are due to the events of the last movie, and how even though they don't say it, how much the Joker really did destroy stuff. Even if they did manage to make everything look peaceful, there's still scars left on this city. And also just the whole faking the death thing is kind of like the Dark Knight Returns book. If you haven't read that, I suggest you read that. It's really good. Yeah, just how amazing this is. It doesn't even feel like it's that long of a movie, and it is. Like, if you look at the runtime, it's a pretty long movie, and how just quickly that goes by. And it's an amazing movie, and also I like the twist. Like, I had already known prior to this about the whole Talia thing, but I was watching the movie, and I'm like, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe that wasn't right. And then they pull Batman Begins on us towards the end, where it's revealed that Miranda Tate's character actually is Talia al Ghul, which I thought was amazing. They were able to basically took something I already knew and make me not think that it was true, and then make it a twist and make me shocked by it to learn that again. This movie is one of the greatest conclusions I think I've ever seen to a trilogy, and it's just amazing. I could talk about every little detail, everything, but I think you should just see most of this stuff for yourself to understand what I'm talking about. Okay, a brief summary of the movie. Okay, so 8 years after the events of Dark Knight, and you can still see that most of the people are still haunted by that. Bruce has become a recluse. Gordon is still struggling with that. He in fact almost reveals to everyone who Harvey really was at one of the meetings. And Catwoman ends up stealing something from Bruce, and you can see she feels guilty about it. Her character starts changing. Fast forward to Bane and his attacks. At first they're very underground, but then they slowly start getting more noticed. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention the prologue where where Bane hijacks his ship. Disguised as a hostage, which I thought was a really cool thing. But anyway, back to this. How Batman makes a comeback, and how opposed to this Alfred is, because I mean, Bruce is walking around with a cane. He's in no shape to be doing stuff like this anymore. And he goes out and tries his best to fight the people working for Bane, but you can sort of just feel it that he's not Batman anymore. Like, just how he acts, he's just sort of he's out of practice. He doesn't have the determination and all the skills and everything he used to have. He's just worn out. It's just sort of like he's acting like Batman, but his heart's really not there anymore. Which you really feel that for the first part. It's like he's lost that part of himself over these 8 years, and that he no longer has that, and he's just trying desperately to rediscover it, but it's impossible because he lost it, and he abandoned that. And with that, he abandoned his reputation and everything, because without Batman, for 8 years, he really was nothing. I thought that was very interesting. I like how they make him like he's in the suit, but he's not there as Batman. And how the police chase after him and everything. Fast forward a little bit more, Bane starts causing more chaos. There was a machine created by Miranda Tate that Bruce helped fund and make, and he takes it, and and plans to use it, and starts this whole big revolution where he blows up the bridges and basically the whole football field, killing a bunch of people, and also killing the creator of the thing, taking out the nuclear part of the thing, nuclear part of the machine, making it a bomb. And Batman and them have to scramble to try and find a solution to this. And for a long time there's before this, Batman ends up getting trapped and fights Bane and loses. Bane breaks his back and throws him into prison. So for a long time, after the whole getting the bomb thing and everything, he really rules the streets and he wins for a long time. The police are basically helpless. They try their best, but there's really nothing they can do. The order is really in Bane's hands. And Bruce, after getting his spine fixed, trains himself again and starts rediscovering that part of him he lost years ago as Batman. And there's a hole that he must pull himself out of, which of course is metaphorical. He pulls himself out of the deep prison and also the deep depths that he's sunk to, and pulls himself up into the sun and becomes the man he was meant to be, and like his father says, learns to pick himself back up again and rises to defeat Bane. And the last act is him defeating Bane, and then with the twist, like I said earlier, revealing Marianne Talia al Ghul, she stabs Batman, and with a truly shocking moment, and starts getting away with the bomb with only seconds left, while Gordon tries desperately to scramble it for a little longer, and Batman gets his the bat, as they call it, the flying airplane like thing, and takes the bomb, and it detonates. And we're led to believe that he dies at first. And I thought this was really touching. They show a funeral, and very sad to say where Alfred said that he failed him and that he didn't, that Bruce trusted him and that he betrayed that trust by leaving. And then we cut to Lucius Fox talking about how towards the last few minutes there was an autopilot thing set and that he got out, and there was talk earlier about this, about the autopilot thing and how he could set it. And so in a final scene before the final scene, Alfred, like he says, is sitting at a restaurant, except this time it's real, and you see him and you see Bruce and Selina Kyle sitting together. He looks over and Bruce nods at him and he nods back. And it cuts back to Blake's character, but before that, in Batman's will, after he lost a bunch of stuff, he let the orphans come live at his mansion, because that's sort of like a homeless shelter. Not a homeless shelter, sort of like an orphanage. Sorry. And last scene is John Blake discovering the Batcave, and a scene very, very reminiscent of the scene where Bruce gets attacked by bats but then stands. The same thing happens to him, and he walks through and discovers different things in the Batcave, and then credits. Okay, now after that, let me just get to the pros. Okay, the pros. There are many. Like I said before, how closely they were able to stick to the comics while also making their own original thing. How they were able to bring in stuff from the previous movies, like the character of Ra's al Ghul and his daughter, and make the whole thing with him like a revenge thing for killing her father, which I thought was really cool. It tied the whole thing together. And also the brief mention, I didn't think about this until now, but in the first movie he mentions he lost his wife, and it's revealed that he lost her in the prison when he escaped because she ended up dying in there, and Talia pulled herself out of the prison, which were led the whole time to believe it was Bane, but it really wasn't. Bane helped her get out of the prison. Yeah, so also there are other things like just the ending. The ending is amazing. It's the whole thing that drove it home. It doesn't leave every question answered. It kind of just, especially with the whole John Blake thing, it doesn't answer, is he going to become Nightwing? Is he going to become the next Batman? It really doesn't tell you. I also thought it was really cool how they made a statue dedicated to Batman. I thought that made that whole thing about him being a symbol really shine, and him just explaining that if he wore a mask, then that meant that Batman could be literally anybody, and that was the whole point, which I thought was really cool. Just how it ties into previous movies, how it brings stuff from there and uses it and uses those ideas and does new things with it is really cool. How it takes previously unfinished parts and finishes them satisfyingly is really good. The music, the acting, just the drama in it is great, especially by Christian Bale, Tom Hardy, Michael Caine. Gary Oldman's really good in this too. Jason Gordon-Levitt's great. Anne Hathaway is really good as Catwoman. Really sympathize with her character more than you usually would, I guess. And yeah, how this movie was able to take, like the previous ones, was able to take stuff from the comics and just do its own thing with it, but also recall things from the comics, like whole Nightfall, Breaking the Back thing, and all the other stuff. It was just amazing. There's so many things amazing about this movie, like the final scene and other things in it too, that if I kept talking about it, this review would be really, really long, be about as long as the movie. So I'm gonna move on to the cons. Okay, the cons. Well, I understand that Bane had to be killed. He's too much of a threat to be kept alive. I didn't really like how he got taken out by Catwoman just by getting shot. It was sort of like the Scarecrow syndrome, where he went out in a kind of weak way after being built up as this big bad guy, but that's just a minor gripe, really. Can't really think of anything else, actually. That's how good this movie is. Okay, this movie was excellent. It was great. It tied the whole trilogy together and made it one cohesive story. And I liked how it focused more on Bruce Wayne's character and not just like the whole facade thing that he puts up, and actually it started making him a character and a real person towards the very end, which I really liked. If I were to rate this, I'd give it a 1 to 5. I'd give it a 5.10. 5.10 out of 5, which means it was really good. The whole trilogy, I would give a 6, even though it's 1 to 5, because this whole thing just wrapped it all together. It's a great story. I advise you go watch it. It's amazing. Okay, this is Alex Ramsey.